When I accepted the position, no one warned me about the night shift. There weren't any whispered stories passed between officers during the handoff. No offhand comments about strange noises or impossible shadows. No warnings tucked between sarcasm and small talk. Nothing. Just a uniform in a plastic bag, keys to a patrol cruiser, and a coverage map that looped through a town so quiet it felt like it was halfway through being forgotten. I'd grown up maybe 30 minutes from here, close enough to visit on weekends, far enough to never pay much attention to it. This town had always seemed a little off, like the silence stretched just a second too long or the streetlights flickered for no reason. But I blamed that on the dying economy, the boarded-up shops, and the way the roads always looked wet, even when it hadn't rained. My first shift started just before midnight. The chief was already waiting outside the station. No smile. Just standing there like some old carving left out in the elements too long. Broad shoulders, deep creases around the eyes, jaw like stone. He didn't bother with introductions, didn't welcome me or ask about my training, just held out a hand. His grip was firm, but he didn't let go right away. There was a moment, half a second too long, where he kept holding on like he wanted to say something, but couldn't. "Did you read the paper on your desk?" he asked. I nodded. I hadn't. Honestly, I thought it was orientation fluff. You know, route details, shift protocols, the usual stuff HR likes to print in all caps and laminate. I figured I'd skim it later when I was sitting around with nothing to do. How important could it be? He didn't press the issue. Just gave me this look. Something between tired and sad, maybe? Or disappointed, I couldn't tell. It sat behind his eyes like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. Then he handed me the cruiser keys and said, "Keep the engine warm." That was it. I pulled out of the station, turned onto Main, and made a slow loop toward the edge of town. Past the bakery that never reopened. Past the car wash with vines climbing through its busted windows. I parked just down the road from the old pharmacy, same one I used to dare my friends to break into when we were teenagers. It looked smaller now. The engine hummed under me, soft and even. The dashboard lights glowed green in the dark. I sat there for a while, letting the quiet settle in. There was no traffic, no people walking home from bars, not even a stray dog in sight. Just a whole lot of nothing. That's when I pulled the paper out of the glove box. It wasn't what I expected. Just a single folded sheet. No department letterhead, no signature. Written in thick black ink. 6 lines, numbered. 1. Remain inside your vehicle from midnight until 3:36 a.m. No matter what you see or hear, do not open the doors or step outside. 2. If you spot oncoming headlights after 2:11 a.m., switch off your engine and lights immediately. Lower your head and do not watch the vehicle pass. 3. If the clock on your dashboard resets to 12 at any point, close your eyes and do not open them until the ticking stops. You'll know it when you hear it. 4. If you hear breathing inside the car that isn't yours, do not acknowledge it. Hold your breath and wait. If it mimics you, remain silent. 5. If another patrol cruiser approaches and seems unfamiliar, check the side markings. If they differ from your assigned unit, avoid eye contact and remain still. 6. After 3:36 a.m., do not acknowledge any radio transmissions. Shut the unit off if it activates on its own. Do not power it back on until full daylight. There wasn't a single word of explanation. Not even a "good luck." It didn't read like a prank. And it definitely didn't feel like a joke. It felt like something someone had written in a rush, someone who knew I wouldn't believe it, until I had to. I must have read those lines 5 times. The letters blurred a little after the 3rd time. The ink had smudged near the edges, like whoever wrote it had sweaty hands. Or maybe they were shaking. I folded the paper and stuck it in my jacket pocket. I wasn't scared, not yet. But I wasn't at ease either. The kind of uneasy you feel when you realize you're the only one in a parking lot at night, and every shadow suddenly feels like it's looking back at you. I leaned back in the seat and stared out the windshield. The fog had started to roll in without me noticing. Just a slow, creeping sheet of gray pressing against the glass, soft and wet like a breath held too long. The town disappeared behind it. Houses, street lamps, signs, all gone. Midnight ticked past. I kept the engine running and waited. The fog kept thickening. By 1:30, I couldn't see the end of the block. The pharmacy I'd parked near had vanished completely, and the streetlights were just dull, floating halos swallowed up by gray. It wasn't normal fog. I grew up in this part of the state. I'd driven through enough early morning mist on back roads to know what it's supposed to look like. This felt heavier. It pressed in against the windows like it was trying to get inside. I checked the dashboard again. Everything looked normal. Gas full, radio off, temperature stable. My fingers kept brushing against the folded paper in my pocket. I hadn't meant to reread the rules, but I kept doing it anyway, like my brain was afraid I'd forget something critical at the worst possible moment. I looked at the clock. 2:10 a.m. That was the first time my stomach twisted, not because anything had happened, but because I knew something was about to. Rule number 2, I watched the clock change to 2:11, and right on cue, the fog ahead of me glowed faintly. Headlights. They were distant at first, just a pale shimmer behind the wall of gray. No sound, no motion, just 2 pinpricks of white light, slowly growing brighter. I don't know what made me react so fast. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe it was the way the light looked wrong. Too still, too even. No bounce, no flicker, like it wasn't really passing through fog at all. I shut off the engine, killed the lights, reached over and flipped the dash switch until every bulb inside the cabin dimmed. Then I lowered my head. It felt ridiculous. I was sitting alone in a squad car, ducking like a kid hiding from the school bus. But I didn't lift my head. I didn't move. I just stayed still and breathed slow through my nose. The glow brightened. It got closer. And then I noticed it. Or more accurately, what I didn't notice. No engine sound. No tires against asphalt, just a low hum. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady. Mechanical but weirdly melodic, like someone had built a machine to whisper and forgotten to turn it off. It crawled under my skin the moment I heard it. It wasn't just around me, it was inside the car. Inside me. I kept my eyes shut. I don't know why. That wasn't part of the rule, but something in that sound made my body lock up. Every part of me screamed, "Do not look." The humming passed by the driver's side, very slowly. I could feel it moving, not with sound but with pressure. Like air shifting. Like static brushing against my arms, rising the hairs under my sleeves. I gripped the wheel without realizing it. Hard enough to make my knuckles go white. The humming stretched out, too long for any normal car. Then it started to fade. I waited until I couldn't feel it anymore. Until the hum vanished and the weight lifted off my shoulders. Then I raised my head. The road was empty again. My headlights were off, the dashboard lights still dimmed, and the fog looked just as thick as before. But the glow was gone. I reached for the keys and started the cruiser. The engine rumbled back to life. Familiar, safe, solid. I didn't know what I just experienced. My brain wanted to call it a hallucination or a trick of the light, but the humming had felt too real, too close. It hadn't passed by like another car. It had passed by like something looking for me. And I'd followed the rule. Whatever that was, whatever it wanted, I hadn't given it the chance to find out. I didn't move the cruiser. Not yet. After the headlights passed, if that's even what they were, I just sat there, letting the engine idle and the dashboard glow creep back into my eyes. I didn't trust the fog. I didn't trust the road. And I definitely didn't trust whatever the hell had just drifted past like it was floating. I kept glancing at the clock. 2:37 a.m. The fog was still thick enough to block everything beyond 5 feet. I couldn't see the pharmacy anymore, or the sidewalk, or even the edge of the intersection I'd parked near. Just gray. There wasn't a single sound. Not a bird, not a car, not even the faint buzz of streetlights. And then the dashboard flickered. Just once. A soft blink, like someone had pressed a reset button I couldn't see. The gauges jumped. The radio screen flashed blue for half a second, then black again. And when I looked at the clock, my stomach turned. 12 o'clock, dead center in the clock. Rule number 3, I didn't even hesitate. I shut my eyes. At first, there was nothing, no sound, no movement, just the stale air inside the cruiser and the slow thump of my own heart. I held my breath, waiting, then tick. It was soft, like the click of a metronome, tucked inside a thick wall. Too quiet to pinpoint. It came again, tick, tick. A little faster now. I clenched my fists and pressed them into my thighs. My back stayed rigid against the seat, eyes shut so tight it made my head hurt. I didn't dare peek. The ticking grew louder and closer. Not from outside, from inside the cruiser, beneath the seat, behind the dash, inside the vents, inside my skull. Tick, 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 tick. It stopped sounding like a clock. It sounded like something crawling or tapping its fingers against the thin spaces behind the plastic panels. I could feel it, in my teeth, in my bones. Every part of my body started buzzing like it had been tuned to the wrong frequency. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. It wasn't just noise anymore, it was pressure. Weight. A sound that wanted to be more than a sound, like it was trying to push its way out from wherever it lived and take up space in me. And then, silence. No fade, no echo, just nothing. The second the sound vanished, the weight lifted. I stayed still, just in case, counted 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. I opened my eyes. The dashboard read 3:01. I felt like I'd been underwater for an hour. My lungs burned. My mouth was so dry I could barely swallow. I sat there just breathing and blinking, trying to ground myself in the familiar shape of the steering wheel, the curve of the gear shift, the steady hum of the engine. I reached toward the radio, not even thinking. Muscle memory. Habit. I needed to hear a voice, any voice, something human, something real. But just before my fingers touched the power button, I stopped. Rule number 6 flashed through my head like a warning alarm. After 3:36 a.m., do not acknowledge any radio transmissions. It wasn't after 36 yet. But the thought still froze me in place. The radio had already flickered once when the clock reset. What if it turned on again? What if the ticking hadn't just been sound, but something trying to wake the damn thing up? I pulled my hand back and rested it on my lap instead. Outside, the fog still clung to the glass like wet cotton. It felt like the cruiser was sinking into it, inch by inch. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something had noticed me. Something that didn't knock or scream or growl. The ticking never came back. But the silence that followed felt worse somehow. I sat in the cruiser, unmoving, hands in my lap like I was afraid to breathe too loud. The fog was still pressed against the windows, just as thick, but now it felt like it was watching me. I know that sounds stupid. You can't look at someone through fog. But that's exactly how it felt, like the air itself was holding its breath and waiting for me to slip up. I turned the heater knob just slightly, trying to keep the inside of the car from fogging up. The vents made a soft whirring sound, barely noticeable. That's when I heard it. Breathing, not mine. Not from the heater, not even from the outside, from inside the cruiser. It started soft, too soft to be certain at first. Just a faint exhale like someone sitting behind me was trying not to be heard. I stopped breathing, completely. My lungs locked up. I listened, and it kept going. Long, unsteady pulls of air, wet, ragged, the kind of sound someone makes when they've been crying for too long and their throat's raw from it. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale again. It matched me. Then it didn't. It got faster. Shorter breaths, more shallow, like it was struggling. Then, it matched me again. Exactly. I stared straight ahead, my fingers trembling now. Rule number 4 was seared into my mind like it had been burned there with a branding iron. If you hear breathing inside the car that isn't yours, do not acknowledge it. Hold your breath and wait. If it mimics you, remain silent. I held my breath. Immediately, the other breath continued. And I could feel it. It wasn't just a sound, it was warmth, right by my neck. Close, too close. It brushed across the back of my hair like someone was leaning in from behind the seat, barely an inch from my skin. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. The silence felt like it had weighed again, like time had stretched out into hours. My chest ached from holding the air in. My vision blurred. The breath stopped. Gone. Just like that. No retreating sound, no footsteps, no door creak, nothing. The air inside the cruiser went cold, colder than it had any right to be with the heater on. I breathed out, slow and careful, like I was afraid the sound might bring it back. I gripped the wheel again just to feel something solid, just to make sure I still could. Then I flipped the headlights back on. They lit up nothing but gray. The fog had only gotten thicker. The beams didn't even reach the end of the hood. It was like trying to drive through smoke that didn't want to move. Still, I needed motion. I needed to get out of that exact spot. I didn't care where I went, just forward. I pulled the cruiser into gear and started driving at a crawl. 5 miles an hour, then 10. Slowly down the road I'd stared at all night. Then I saw it. Another cruiser. It was parked just off the shoulder. nose angled into the trees, like it had pulled over in a hurry and stopped halfway into the ditch. Same make, same light bar, same decals. But the unit number wasn't mine. Not even close. I didn't slow down, didn't look at it. I just kept driving, hands tight on the wheel, eyes locked on the edge of the fog in front of me. My pulse hammered in my ears. I could feel sweat running down my back, even though the car was freezing. Rule number 5, burned through my memory like a warning sign. If another patrol cruiser approaches and seems unfamiliar, check the side markings. If they differ from your assigned unit, avoid eye contact and remain still. I didn't stop. I didn't check the markings. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I knew better. I'd already made it this far. I just prayed whatever was in that other cruiser didn't decide to follow me. The other cruiser didn't follow me. At least, I don't think it did. I kept driving through the fog with the windows up, the vents blowing lukewarm air, and both hands white-knuckled on the wheel. My eyes flicked constantly between the rear view, the side mirrors, and the road ahead, even though none of them showed more than a few feet in any direction. That wall of mist was still everywhere, like I'd never left the spot where the ticking happened. But I had. I knew I had. I was moving. The clock on the dash read 3:32 a.m., just a few more minutes. I repeated that over and over, quietly under my breath like a chant. Just a few more minutes and I'd be past whatever this was. I'd seen something strange, heard things I couldn't explain, but I'd followed the rules. Every single one. I was almost in the clear. And then the radio clicked on. Just a soft, mechanical snap. No one touched it. My hand wasn't even near the console. The static rolled in, low and broken, like someone tuning an old TV. And then I heard her. "Eva, can you hear me?" My whole body froze. That voice wasn't static. It wasn't random. It was Chloe, my sister. She'd been dead 8 years. Slid off the road on black ice late one winter. Her car hit a tree. The impact was instant. I was the one who found her. I remember everything. What the blood looked like on the steering wheel, how her bracelet had caught on the gear shift, the way her mouth was slightly open, like she'd been about to call for help and never got the chance. But now she was here, in my cruiser, on the radio. "Eva," she whispered again. "I'm at the lake, our spot, I can't leave. Please." Her voice cracked, not like static, like crying. I could smell the water before I realized what was happening, that soft, muddy scent of the lake near our childhood home. The place we used to sneak off to after school and skip rocks until the sun went down. I could hear the clinking of her bracelets. She always wore those cheap silver bangles, even when they annoyed our mom. "I don't know how to get out," she said. "You have to come." I almost answered. I almost said her name. My hand was already reaching for the mic when the rule came crashing back into my mind like a punch to the chest. 6. After 3:36 a.m., do not acknowledge any radio transmissions. Shut the unit off if it activates on its own. Do not power it back on until full daylight. I looked at the clock. 3:36 a.m., exactly. My thumb hovered over the button. My whole body shook. It didn't feel like a trick. It didn't feel like a test. It felt like her. The Chloe I remembered. The voice I hadn't heard in nearly a decade. The voice I missed so badly it hurt. "I'm scared," she said, softer now. "Please don't leave me again." And I almost broke, but I didn't. I shut the radio off mid-sentence. The silence hit like a slap, sharp and absolute. It made my ears ring. I kept my eyes forward, didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't move, just sat there, listening to the sound of my own breathing and the low idle of the cruiser's engine. Whatever that thing was, whatever had taken her voice, it had nearly worked. It knew me. It knew who to use, what to say. It hadn't just wanted to scare me. It wanted me to open the door. The silence after I shut off the radio felt too big to fit in the cruiser. It wasn't just quiet. It was wrong. Like every sound in the world had been vacuumed out of existence. No engine hum, no crackle of static, not even the usual clicks from the dashboard cooling down. Just me. Sitting there, still breathing, somehow. I checked the clock again. 3:38 a.m. I was past the danger zone. According to the rules, I'd made it. But it didn't feel like anything was over. Every second that ticked by dragged slower than it should have. Like time was resisting the sunrise. Like the night wasn't ready to let me go. I left the radio off and kept my hands on the wheel, staring into the fog. I didn't try to drive, didn't call for backup. I just waited. I wasn't sure for what. Maybe a sign. Maybe some confirmation that I hadn't lost my mind out there. The fog didn't thin. Not right away, it just started to brighten. Bit by bit, the thick gray turned soft. Pale. Then, almost white. I could see the faint outline of treetops, the shape of the road beneath me, a hint of sky turning blue instead of black. When the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, I finally exhaled. Something inside me loosened. Not all the way. Just enough that I felt like I'd move again without breaking. I put the cruiser in gear and started back toward the station. I didn't rush. I didn't let my eyes wander to the woods or the empty houses or the rearview mirror. I just drove, quiet and steady. By the time I pulled into the station lot, the sun was up. The chief was already waiting on the steps. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there like a statue, same as before. Only now I could see it more clearly, the lines around his mouth, the tired set of his shoulders, like he'd lived through the same shift I just did, too many times to count. I got out of the car. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to say something, but I didn't. He looked at me and then nodded. Like he understood, like he'd been holding his breath this whole time and finally decided to let it go. I didn't go home. I should have. I needed a shower. Sleep. Something to wash the night off of me, but I didn't. I drove straight to the cemetery. Chloe's grave was near the back. A little stone marker beneath a crooked pine tree. Just her name, 2 dates, and a small angel carved into the top. Its left wing chipped off during a bad winter storm a few years ago. I knelt in front of it. The sun was warm on my face. The grass was still wet with dew. I stared at her name for a long time before I said anything. Then I whispered, "It wasn't you." The wind stirred the branches above. A few birds called out from the tree line. It all felt normal again, like the world had remembered how to breathe. Whatever had spoken through that radio, whatever had used Chloe's voice to pull me toward the edge, it was gone now, vanished with the night. But I kept the rules. I didn't crumple the paper. I didn't throw it away. I folded it back up and slid it into my wallet behind my ID. It stays with me now. Every shift, every hour, every breath. Because sometimes late at night, when I'm the only one on patrol, I think about what would have happened if I'd looked, if I'd opened the door, if I'd answered her voice. And I know, some things out there know exactly what will break you. And that's why the rules exist, not to protect you from the dark, but to protect you from the things that pretend to be light.